welcome to another episode of Vulgar Video Vlogtober. I am your host, Jessica, and this is my co-host,
Samuel.
And today we are going to continue on with our saga of first of series. Today's episode is going to be about The Stepfather. It was made in 1987. It was directed by Joseph Rubin, and our runtime is about 89 minutes. And we are watching it today on Popcorn Flix. Popcorn Flix is free. There are advertisements in it, but it is free. Channel, free to watch.
Yeah, sure, some of you have seen the remake. I've never watched the original, and there are two sequels, neither one of which came out in theaters in America. So both of them were home movie releases in America.
I've seen the remake as well. It was fine. I mean, it is what it is. I'm curious to see if it's just a shot for shot or if they throw in their own twist. Based off the info, it says after murdering his entire family, a man remarries a widow with a teenage daughter in another town and prepares to do it all over again. So this time around, I'm assuming our protagonist is the female, the teenage daughter, versus in the remake, it's the teenage son. So, curious to see the differences in this one.
Alright, well, let's just get into it.
Alright, we will see you guys in about 89 minutes. Hello and welcome back. We are back from our adventure, The Stepfather. Overall, I think it's a way stronger movie than the remake for sure. I'm starting to feel more biased now towards 80s movies. At least for horror, at least for horror genre movies. The cast was strong, the dialogue was good. Some of the shots were off, I'll give it that. But overall, the plot line, just the way that the movie flowed, as far as like from story to story, not necessarily the shots, because once again, some of the shots were weird, but from story to the moving on with the story, I thought it was very strong. And we got some good kills in there. So yeah. Yeah,
there's pretty decent. They're more of like low-key fight scenes as opposed to like straight up horror scenes or anything like that. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's supposed to be a fairly realistic style movie, so that makes sense. Definitely the character work is very strong. You got good character development in it. Dialogues are always working out pretty good. It's a decent production, nothing crazy. They didn't, break the bank doing anything, but there's nothing wrong with that. And our final girl, I think, is actually a pretty dang strong character. So that's always a good thing. A couple of the cons, there is a sort of B story in here.
Yeah.
About tracking down our villain that is just unnecessary. It ends up going pretty much nowhere. It almost seems like it's just a device to enter a weapon into the final fight scene.
Yeah.
Like, that seems like all that it was ever meant to do.
Dude just gets murked.
Yeah.
He's trying to find the killer, find out who the killer is, and once he gets inside the house, it's just like he just gets straight up murked. So we basically spent time with this character, which I was still kind of confused on who he was, like halfway through his story plot. I was just like, who is this? Like, is he like I thought the dad died. Like, I'm so lost right now. But, yeah, kind of sucked for him.
Yeah, so that was a little bit useless, sort of. The only other thing that's kind of egregious is there is a just random nude scene for no particular reason at all, where the character is supposed to be 16 in the film, which is just always kind of gross. So that's a bit unnecessary. It doesn't, detract from the film that much. It just feels unnecessary. It didn't have to be in there. It was just a shot to be in there.
Yeah, like the whole point of her being in the shower was her not hearing that our side B character gets murked downstairs, but it's like you didn't have to like film her getting undressed. You didn't have to film her titty and her ass. Like, it was just like, that was just completely unnecessary. You can film like, you know, her like getting ready to take a shower. We don't need to see her unclothing. Like we can kind of get that. Her turning the fucking shower on. So like I don't understand why we had to show her ass and her titty, especially for a character who's supposed to be 16.
Well, you know, that is one of the big differences between like 80s horror movies and then the modern ones, especially remakes. They normally tone that sort of thing down. In the 80s you get a lot of that. You get a lot of just random nudity because, you know, sex and violence sell. So that's why you get a lot of it in the 80s ones. Once, you know, we started getting into the 2000s with remakes and things like that, that normally gets toned down, usually because they're aiming for a PG-13 rating, which I do believe the remake of The Stepfather is PG-13.
Yeah.
So that's what they're doing it for. They're trying to sell tickets, basically.
I guess, but it was just completely unnecessary. Let's talk about the horror elements to it. So we kind of like were talking through it as we're watching it. I feel like, unfortunately, this is more of a thriller. There, as far as like if you were to like try to convince me it was horror, was I guess the realistic part that, you know, the mom gets with this guy within a year and they're already married, like, and he just turns out to be a crazy person. So, you know, do background checks, make sure you know who the fuck you're living with type of situation. You know, that's kind of fucking terrifying. But other than the realism of that, the very first opening scene was pretty was graphic. Like, he's basically, you know, cleaning up, totally changing his persona into a different guy, and as he's leaving you just see his whole like fucking murder scene, which was pretty horrendous. So that was pretty, I guess, the horrifying part that you could argue for.
Yeah, generally I would consider it more of a thriller with horror elements.
Yeah.
But there's nothing too wrong with that, really. You know, because what is more terrifying in reality? Is it somebody coming into your home that you don't know, you know, living with you, and then one day just goes off the rails? Or is it, you know, a guy in a hockey mask who's kind of undead chasing you around with a machete, which is the more realistic scenario here. So, but with all that being said, what is the rating that you got for this one?
The rating, I'm gonna have to give it a 3.5 out of 5. I know I don't really like doing the half points part, but I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5. Like, I enjoyed watching this movie. I enjoyed ripping the shit out of the unrealistic shenanigans. For example, kid gets suspended 3 times and is immediately expelled.
It was a different time. It was a different
time.
All right.
What? I work in the education system. Like, kids getting suspended 3 times is fucking nothing.
That's like a week.
Nothing happens. That's a fucking Tuesday. All right. With that being said, I did like how, our character, our female lead character, was strong. Like, her background story is, like, the reason the stepfather is in the picture is because, like, her dad died. And I like that they had her going to therapy. Like, I feel like as far as like looking at movies, like especially in that time, like you don't really see that. Like usually people, like even in modern movies, I feel like usually somebody going to therapy is more for like comedic effect.
Sometimes, yeah.
Like, I've seen it in, like, rom-coms where, like, people are going to therapy for, it's, like, it's comedic effect because the therapist is being real with them and all that kind of shit. Versus, the scenes with the therapist, I thought were very meaningful. It felt really real. It felt very genuine. Like, I just like that they added it in there. I know it has nothing to do with the movie as it being a horror movie. I just really genuinely I really appreciated that they threw that in there for something as far as being realistic for our character to go through.
Mine, I'm just going to go with a 3 out of 5 on this one. The main detractions being it's not really a horror movie, which, you know, if I'm doing a rating based on it being a horror movie and it's not really one, I mean, that's kind of a failure on my part for not researching it enough to figure out what exactly it is. But, so there's not too many scares.
No.
Like at all. So that's kind of wonky, and I know it's an 80s film. It probably didn't have a big budget. It does look kind of crap. I'm not, even for the time, it didn't look great.
Like, some of the shots are just kind of, like, off, or they're weird.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad
like,
composition and execution. It's kind of...
Like,
it's a little distracting.
Yeah, like, the transitions were just kind of, like, off. Like, they couldn't decide, like, what kind of style they were trying to, like, keep consistent with. So, like I said, the story was going smoothly, but just, like, everything around it, like the shots, the transitions, was just kind of weird. So,
and I think for the probably 20 overall minutes of screen time where we have to deal with that side story, that's gonna get
that's hurting you, man. That's hurting you.
You took it nowhere. You didn't even really explain too well who this side guy is.
No.
So that's another bit of a problem. So you get a 3 out of 5. But I would definitely recommend watching it. I think it's definitely worth a watch. But would we continue watching... Well, I guess we have to do kind of a spoiler here. The stepdad does die in the end. So...
Motherfucker dies! So, as far as, like, continuing the series, fuck yes. Because, like, what the fuck you gonna do with that? Like...
Yeah, because, again, this isn't Jason or Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger. This isn't a supernatural character. This is a human.
Yeah.
So presumably he can't just come back from the dead like that. So I would definitely watch this, at least the second one, just to see
where the fuck they went with it.
I guess the most likely thing would be we'd follow a different stepfather, but then it's like, well, why don't you just make it into your own film?
Overall, a 3.5, because I agree with you. It wasn't really horror-esque per se. The shots were all weird. We get some side B character that goes nowhere. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Alright. Well, thank you guys for tuning in with us on the review of The Stepfather. We will see you guys in the next one. Hello and welcome back to another... Let's try that.
Yes.
Oh. Sorry.